Are you alone? Then marry my mom. She's kindest. Little girl's words changed me. Ethan had always lived alone. The harsh frontier colony on the planet Vera 9 was not kind to those who could not fend for themselves. The air was thin, the sun harsher than any on Earth, and the wildlife far more dangerous than most settlers had expected. Ethan had survived because of his wits, his determination, and an almost stubborn hope that one day, life might be more than endless labor and solitude. He had lost his family when he was young, and since then, the weight of loneliness had been a constant companion. Even now, at 25, he found it difficult to imagine sharing his life with anyone. On that morning, the market was busy with settlers, alien merchants, and travelers from other colonies. The air buzzed with the sound of barter, strange musical tones from alien instruments, and the occasional cry of a creature that no human had yet learned to name. Ethan wandered slowly among the stalls, inspecting supplies, scavenging what he could afford, and keeping an eye on the paths in case predators slipped through the outskirts. Then he heard it, a small, trembling voice calling his name. He turned, expecting to see another human child who had wandered away from their parents. Instead, he found a little alien girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old, standing near the edge of the crowded bazaar. Her skin shimmered faintly in the morning light, pale with streaks of iridescent blue, and her large eyes reflected both fear and hope. She clutched a small, intricately carved wooden trinket in her tiny hands, turning it over nervously. Can you help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was halting, broken, but understandable. Ethan noticed immediately that she was not from any of the usual alien traders in the market. There was a vulnerability about her, a sense of being completely alone in a place that could swallow a child whole without a second thought. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He knelt down to her level, keeping his hands visible and calm. "Hey there," he said softly. "Where's your mom? Are you lost?" The girl shook her head, eyes wide. "No, she is sick. She is all alone. I need help. Please, please help my mom." Her words tumbled out in a rush, filled with urgency and desperation. Ethan's heart tightened. Something about her plea, the innocence and trust in her gaze, made him feel a responsibility he had not felt in years. "Okay," he said slowly. "I'll help you, but I need to know where to go. Can you show me?" She nodded, a faint smile breaking through the fear. "Yes, please." "Hurry, she is very weak." Without wasting another moment, Ethan followed the little girl out of the busy bazaar and into the rugged terrain surrounding the settlement. The path was narrow and rocky, with deep gullies and jagged stones that could twist an ankle if one wasn't careful. Lyra, he had learned her name was Lyra, led the way with surprising confidence, pointing out dangers with small gestures and short warnings in her broken human tongue. As they walked, Ethan learned a little about her life. Lyra had been living with her mother, Amara, after her father had died years ago. Her mother had always been kind, strong, and brave, but lately she had fallen ill. Lyra had been left to care for herself and her mother, but the illness had worsened, and she had no one to turn to. Ethan listened carefully, impressed by the little girl's knowledge of survival despite her age. The journey was not easy. The planet was wild, and even near the settlement danger lurked everywhere. Rocks shifted unexpectedly, and strange creatures slithered in the shadows. At one point, a pack of small, carnivorous creatures leaped from behind a cliff, their sharp teeth glinting in the sun. Ethan acted instinctively, throwing a nearby rock to distract them and lifting Lyra onto his back. He ran, dodging the creatures until they scattered. Lyra's small arms clung tightly around him, her heart racing in sync with his. "You saved me," she said after a long moment, her voice trembling with awe. Ethan smiled, trying to ease his own tension. "We save each other sometimes," he said. "But you were very brave, too. You knew where to go, didn't you?" She nodded, her eyes shining. I wanted to save my mom. She is the kindest." The word kindest struck Ethan in a way he hadn't expected. Kindness was rare in the colony. Survival often demanded ruthlessness, and most settlers had hardened themselves against the world. But here was this tiny alien girl, valuing kindness above all else, and he realized he had not encountered such pure-heartedness in years. Night fell, and the temperature dropped quickly. The alien sky glowed faintly with streaks of green and blue auroras, casting a soft light over the jagged terrain. Ethan found a sheltered nook between two boulders and set down his pack. He shared some of his rations with Lyra, who accepted them shyly, her small fingers brushing his in a moment of trust. "You are alone?" she asked suddenly, her big eyes fixed on him. Ethan hesitated. He had never told anyone about his solitary life, the loss of his family, or the emptiness he felt each day. But the little girl's question was simple, innocent, and somehow comforting. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm alone." Lyra tilted her head, considering him. Then, with a seriousness that startled him, she said, "Then marry my mom. She is kindest." Ethan laughed softly, though he could feel a strange warmth in his chest. He did not know what to say. The words were unexpected, and yet the little girl's sincerity made them feel almost like a command, or perhaps a wish that he could not ignore. He looked down at her, a small smile spreading across his face. "That's a big request for someone your size," he said, half joking but not dismissive. She simply nodded, as if stating a truth he could not deny. "I want her safe. I want you to help her." Ethan felt a weight settle on his shoulders, but it was not a burden. It was a sense of purpose, something he had not felt in years. He realized that this little girl, fragile yet fearless, had already changed the course of his life with her simple words. Protecting her mother was no longer just an act of kindness. It was something he wanted to do with all his heart. The night passed with little sleep, but Ethan felt a renewed sense of energy. At first light, he and Lyra continued their journey. The terrain became more challenging as they climbed higher into the cliffs, where the wind howled and the path narrowed. At one point, Ethan had to carry Lyra across a swollen stream, the water rushing around them with surprising force. She trusted him completely, wrapping her arms around his neck and holding on tightly as he searched for stable footing. Along the way, Lyra talked more about her mother, about the moments when Amara had laughed, cooked simple meals, and taught her how to survive in a world that was often cruel. Ethan listened, absorbing the little details, each one painting a picture of a woman who was brave, intelligent, and deeply kind. He found himself admiring her before he had even met her. As the day wore on, they reached the edge of a forested valley that opened into a settlement hidden among the cliffs. Smoke rose from small homes built from local stone and bioluminescent plants, and the sounds of daily life reached them. Lyra's eyes lit up with relief. "We almost there," she said. Ethan smiled at her excitement. "Almost there," he agreed. He felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. He did not know what awaited them, but he knew that he would not abandon them now. As they entered the outskirts of the village, villagers paused to look at the little alien girl and the human who had arrived with her. There were whispers, some curious, some cautious. Ethan could feel the weight of their stares, but he held his head high. Lyra squeezed his hand, and he felt a silent promise pass between them. Finally, they arrived at a small, modest home near the center of the village. Lyra ran to the door and knocked urgently. A moment later it opened, revealing a woman with soft, intelligent eyes and a wary expression. She looked exhausted, the toll of illness visible in her posture and face. "Mom," Lyra cried, running into her arms. You must be safe. He helped me." Amara looked up at Ethan, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the stranger. "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. Ethan stepped forward, bowing slightly. "My name is Ethan," he said. "I helped your daughter get here safely. I want to make sure you're okay." Amara studied him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then slowly a small smile touched her lips. "You are brave," she said softly. "And kind, thank you." Lyra beamed at Ethan, her small voice whispering, "See, I told you she is kindest." Ethan smiled back, feeling warmth he had not known in years. For the first time in a long while, he realized he had a purpose beyond mere survival. And he understood that the journey he had begun with a little girl's words was only the start of something much greater, something that could change his life forever. The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged cliffs of Vera 9 when Ethan and Lyra set off again. The village had been welcoming enough, and Amara had allowed them to stay nearby. But the little girl insisted that they needed to go further into the wilderness to reach her mother's true home, a small dwelling tucked into the cliffs above a glowing river. Ethan was not surprised that a child of her age could navigate the dangerous terrain with such certainty. Lyra moved as if she had known these paths all her life, her small feet barely making a sound as they stepped over rocks and roots. Ethan followed carefully, carrying a pack with supplies and keeping a sharp eye out for dangers. He had grown used to the harshness of the planet, but this terrain was different. The cliffs were steep, the wind strong, and the paths narrow. One misstep could send a person tumbling down hundreds of feet. Ethan had to be cautious, but he found himself admiring Lyra's courage. She moved with a confidence he could not fake, and her trust in him gave him courage in return. Along the way, she began to talk more freely about her mother. She always smiles," Lyra said softly, "even when things are hard. She makes food taste good even when there is almost nothing, and she tells me stories of the stars, big ones, small ones, all of them. She is strongest, even when sick." Ethan listened quietly, letting her words sink in. He could see why Lyra admired her mother so much, and he realized that the little girl's bravery was a reflection of the strength she had learned from her mother. Ethan also noticed something else. This little girl, with her soft words and wide eyes, was slowly beginning to fill a space in his heart that had been empty for years. The journey was not easy. They had to cross a narrow bridge of vines stretched over a deep ravine, where the wind howled so fiercely that it threatened to throw them off balance. Ethan went first, testing each step, then reached back to pull Lyra along. "Hold tight," he said, his voice firm but gentle. Lyra clung to his arm, and though her legs shook, she managed to follow. When they reached the other side, she looked up at him with a small smile and said, "You are brave too." They continued through a forest of glowing trees, whose luminescent leaves lit their path like lanterns. Strange creatures watched them from the shadows, curious but not aggressive. Ethan kept his hand near the hilt of his survival knife, just in case, but the creatures seemed more interested in observing than attacking. Lyra whispered the names of some of the animals, and Ethan was impressed by her knowledge. She had learned so much about this world despite her young age, and she shared it freely, as if teaching him something precious. As midday approached, they stopped at a small clearing to rest. Ethan shared some water with Lyra, and she sat quietly, hugging her knees. He could see the exhaustion in her small frame, but also a determination that would not let her give up. "You've been walking a long time," he said. "Do you want to rest a bit more?" "No," she replied firmly. I must get my mom. She is waiting. She needs help." Ethan nodded, feeling a swell of respect for her. He had faced many challenges alone in his life, but nothing had demanded as much courage as this little girl's determination. He realized that she had been carrying the weight of responsibility far beyond her years, and he felt honored to be able to help. They set off again, climbing higher into the cliffs where the air grew thin, and the wind cut through their clothes like a knife. Ethan felt the strain in his legs, but he refused to show weakness. He could not allow anything to happen to Lyra, and he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. She scampered ahead, pausing occasionally to make sure he was still following, her small hand waving at him to hurry. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered overhead. A storm was coming, and the winds grew stronger, whipping around the cliffs with a ferocity that made every step dangerous. Ethan searched for shelter and finally spotted a shallow cave in the rock face. They ran for it, dodging falling debris and loose stones, and finally made it inside, panting and wet from the sudden rain. Inside the cave, Lyra shook slightly, her small body trembling from the cold. Ethan removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, holding her close to provide warmth. She leaned against him, exhausted, but her eyes still held that same fierce determination. "You are kind," she said softly. "Even in storm, you are kind." Ethan smiled, though he felt the fatigue in his own body. "We're almost there," he said. "Just a little farther." The night was long and the storm raged outside. Ethan stayed awake, keeping watch while Lyra slept fitfully against him. He thought about her words, about her simple request that he marry her mother. At first he had laughed, but now he understood the depth behind them. Lyra's innocence had forced him to confront a part of himself he had ignored for years, the desire to protect, to care, and to belong somewhere. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed. The cliffs glistened with rain, and the river below sparkled in the sunlight. Ethan and Lyra continued their climb, the path now slippery and treacherous from the storm. At one point, Lyra slipped on a wet rock and Ethan caught her just in time, holding her tightly as she gasped. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, her small voice filled with gratitude. Finally, after hours of climbing, they reached a plateau where Lyra's mother's home stood. It was a modest dwelling, built into the cliff with windows that overlooked the glowing river below. Smoke rose from the chimney, and the smell of cooked food drifted through the air. Lyra's eyes lit up and she ran toward the door, Ethan following closely behind. The door opened and Amara appeared, her face pale but filled with relief. She reached out to Lyra, holding her close. "You made it," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I was so worried." Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. He helped me. He kept me safe." Amara looked at Ethan, studying him carefully. She had always been cautious around humans, knowing that their intentions could be unpredictable. But something in Ethan's calm, steady gaze told her that he meant no harm. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have a brave heart." Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. He had never expected to feel this connection, this sense of purpose. "It was nothing," he said humbly. "I just wanted to make sure you and Lyra were safe." Lyra hugged her mother tightly, then looked up at Ethan with a mischievous smile. "See, I told you she is kindest." Amara laughed softly, the sound warm and musical. She looked at Ethan with something more than gratitude in her eyes. She saw a man who could protect her, who could care for her daughter, and who had proven himself through courage and selflessness. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope, not just for survival, but for a life that could be brighter than the harsh world around them. Ethan helped Amara bring in supplies and prepare a simple meal. Lyra watched eagerly, asking questions and offering small suggestions. Ethan found himself enjoying the domesticity, the quiet moments of normal life that he had not experienced in years. He felt a sense of belonging he had long thought impossible, and he realized that the journey with Lyra had changed him in ways he could not yet fully understand. As night fell over the cliffs, the three of them sat together, sharing the meal. Lyra's small hand rested on Ethan's arm, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. Amara smiled at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, an understanding that perhaps their lives had been destined to intertwine. Ethan looked at the little girl, then at her mother, and he felt a quiet determination settle within him. He would protect them, care for them, and stay with them if they would have him. He realized that Lyra's words, the innocent request that he marry her mother, were not just a child's wish. They were a call to something greater, a chance for him to be part of a family, to find purpose, and to prove that humans, even in the harshest corners of the galaxy, could embody courage, kindness, and loyalty. The night passed peacefully. the sounds of the river below, and the gentle wind in the cliffs creating a sense of calm. Ethan knew that challenges would come. That life on Vera 9 was never easy, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face them. Not alone, but with Lyra and Amara by his side. And as he drifted to sleep, he thought of the little girl's words again, repeating them quietly in his mind. "Are you alone? Then marry my mom, she's kindest." He smiled, understanding at last that sometimes the simplest words could change a life forever. The morning sun spread soft light over the cliffs, painting the rocks in warm hues of gold and rose. Ethan had slept better than he had in years, waking to the sounds of the gentle river below and the faint, melodic calls of alien birds. Lyra was already awake, sitting near the edge of the small patio, swinging her legs back and forth while watching the shimmering water. Her eyes brightened as she spotted Ethan emerging from the dwelling. "Good morning," she called softly. "Did you sleep well?" Ethan smiled, walking over to her. "I did, and you?" She nodded eagerly. I dreamed about stars. Mom says stars watch over us even when we are alone." I think they watched over you too." Ethan chuckled softly. There was a wisdom in the child's words that was beyond her years. Her belief in kindness and hope, even in the quiet protection of the stars, made him feel a strange warmth in his chest. "Well, the stars might have done that, but I also think it was your courage that guided me." Lyra beamed at him, and together they entered the dwelling to greet Amara. She was already preparing a small breakfast, her movements careful but efficient. Ethan noticed the careful attention she paid to every detail, ensuring Lyra had everything she needed while conserving supplies. The sight filled him with admiration. She was strong and resourceful, and the gentle way she treated her daughter showed a depth of love that few humans or aliens could match. "Good morning, Ethan," Amara said, smiling faintly. "Did you rest well?" "Yes," he replied. "Thank you for letting me stay. I want to help, not just today, but for as long as you'll allow me." Amara studied him quietly, and Ethan felt the weight of her gaze. For a moment he wondered if she could see the loneliness that had haunted him for years, or the longing for connection he had buried deep within himself. Slowly she nodded. "Very well, you may help, but remember, kindness is more than protection. It is patience, understanding, and trust. Do not forget that." Ethan nodded seriously. "I understand." After breakfast, they set out to check the surrounding area. Ethan wanted to ensure that the settlement and Amara's home were safe, and Lyra insisted on helping. She moved with surprising agility, pointing out areas where rocks were loose or paths could become dangerous in a sudden storm. Ethan marveled at her instinctive knowledge of the cliffs and the river, realizing that the little girl had been navigating this terrain long before he arrived. As they worked together, Lyra spoke of the village, the animals, and her mother's past. "Mom, she always tells me stories of the old world," she said, "of planets far away, of humans who were brave and kind. I think you are like them." Ethan paused, struck by her words. He had never thought of himself as heroic or significant. He had survived, yes, but bravery had always seemed like a story other people lived, not him. Yet here was this little girl, placing trust and admiration in him with a sincerity that humbled him. He realized that her words were not only a reflection of her faith in him, but also a challenge, a reminder to rise above fear and doubt. The day grew hotter, and the cliffs shimmered under the relentless sun. Ethan and Lyra climbed higher, checking the safety of paths and inspecting for any signs of danger. Strange creatures scuttled along the rocks, watching them with curiosity. Ethan was careful, making sure each step was stable, but Lyra moved as if she had been born to this environment. Her laughter, when she found a small creature hiding behind a rock, was infectious. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a lightness in his heart that had been missing for years. By midday, clouds began to gather in the distance, dark and foreboding. Ethan recognized the signs of a sudden storm. Vera 9 was known for its unpredictable weather, and a storm could turn a climb into a deadly ordeal. He called for a halt and led Lyra to a natural overhang in the rocks that offered shelter. They waited, watching as the wind picked up and the first drops of rain began to fall. Lyra shivered slightly, and Ethan draped his jacket over her shoulders. "Don't worry," he said gently. "We'll wait here until it passes. Storms come and go, but we stay safe together." She nodded, hugging herself, and then spoke softly. "Ethan, you are like a star. You guide me." The simple metaphor struck him deeply. A star guiding the way, she saw his actions as more than survival, as more than mere protection. To her, he was a source of hope. He realized that her view of him, innocent and pure, was shaping him in ways he had never imagined. He vowed silently to live up to it, to be the protector she believed him to be. As the storm raged outside, Ethan thought about Lyra's earlier words about her mother. "Marry my mom, she's kindest." At first, it had seemed like a child's fantasy, something whimsical and impossible. But now, seeing her devotion, her admiration, and the trust she placed in him, the idea no longer seemed so strange. He could feel the beginnings of a connection forming, not just with the little girl but with her mother, a woman whose strength and kindness had shaped this child. Hours passed, and the storm finally began to subside. The sun returned, casting glimmering light on the wet cliffs. Ethan led Lyra out from their shelter, testing the ground carefully. The rocks were slick, but they moved with caution and steadiness. At one point, a loose stone tumbled down, narrowly missing them, and Lyra laughed nervously, clinging to him. I am scared," she admitted quietly. Ethan knelt down, looking into her eyes. "It's okay to be scared. Being brave doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you keep going, even when you do." She smiled, absorbing the lesson with the clarity only a child could possess. "Then you are brave too, Ethan. You never stop." By late afternoon, they finally reached a plateau overlooking a valley filled with luminescent flora and the glowing river that Lyra had described. Amara's home was visible in the distance, smoke rising gently from the chimney. Lyra's face lit up with relief and joy. She ran ahead, Ethan following closely. When they arrived, Amara was outside, struggling with a bundle of supplies. She looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Lyra running toward her. "Lyra, you made it," she cried, scooping the little girl into her arms. Ethan approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm Ethan," he said softly. "I helped Lyra get here safely." Amara's gaze softened as she studied him. She could see the fatigue in his face, the strength in his posture, and the sincerity in his eyes. Slowly she nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It is not easy to trust someone from outside, but you have proven yourself, brave, kind, and patient. You may stay if you wish." Ethan felt a swell of warmth. I would like that," he said honestly. "I want to help, not just today but for as long as you need me." Lyra, watching the exchange, whispered with a grin, "See, I told you she is kindest." The day ended with a quiet dinner in the small home. Ethan helped prepare the food, sharing stories of the stars and distant lands, while Lyra listened eagerly, occasionally asking questions or offering small observations. Amara watched him with an approving smile, appreciating his effort, patience, and the gentle way he treated her daughter. As night fell, they sat together outside, looking at the glowing river below. Ethan felt a sense of peace that he had not known in years. He had started the day as a stranger, guiding a small child through dangerous cliffs, and now he was part of a small family, trusted and valued. He realized that Lyra's words, the simple request that he marry her mother, were more than just childish whimsy. They had opened a door to something meaningful, a chance for connection, care, and belonging in a world that often offered none. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to hope. Hope that he could protect them, care for them, and perhaps, in time, become part of the life they shared. And as he gazed at the stars beginning to appear in the alien sky, he felt a sense of determination settle within him. He would be the guide, the protector, and the friend they needed. And most importantly, he realized that through a little girl's simple, innocent words, his life had begun to change forever. The sun rose slowly over the cliffs, casting golden light on Amara's small home. Ethan awoke to the quiet sounds of the glowing river below, the soft hum of alien insects, and Lyra's gentle whispers as she spoke to her mother. The day promised warmth, but Ethan knew that life on Vera 9 was never without danger. The cliffs were steep, the winds unpredictable, and the wildlife unforgiving. Yet he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bond he had formed with Lyra and Amara had given him strength, and he was determined to prove that humans, even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, could be kind, brave, and steadfast. After a simple breakfast, Ethan suggested they explore the surrounding area to ensure that the home and its approach paths were secure. Lyra eagerly agreed, jumping to her feet and grabbing his hand. She ran ahead with a mix of excitement and determination, guiding him along narrow paths that twisted through cliffs and ledges. Ethan followed carefully, impressed by the child's instinctive knowledge of the terrain. She knew where the rocks were loose, where the wind could knock someone off balance, and even which creatures might be watching them from the shadows. As they walked, Lyra told him more about the village and its people. They like my mom," she said, her voice small but confident. They know she is kindest, but some are jealous. They do not like humans much. You must be careful." Ethan nodded, appreciating the warning. He had faced prejudice before, both from humans and aliens, but he had never encountered malice that stemmed from jealousy. "I understand," he said. "We will be careful together." The path led them to a high ridge overlooking the valley. From there, Ethan could see the neighboring cliffs and the settlements beyond. Suddenly, a group of figures appeared on a distant ridge, moving quickly toward Amara's home. Ethan's heart tightened. He could recognize their intent. They were raiders, likely hoping to take what Amara and the villagers had built. Their movements were deliberate, their weapons glinting in the morning light. "Lyra, stay close to me," Ethan whispered, scanning the terrain for options. The little girl nodded, her small hand gripping his arm tightly. He could feel her heartbeat against his side, small but steady, and it reminded him of his promise to protect her and her mother. He led her down a narrow path that wound through dense rocks and glowing plants, using the terrain to hide their approach. As they reached a vantage point above the river, Ethan began to plan. He needed to defend Amara's home, protect the villagers, and ensure that no one was harmed. He scanned the area, noticing natural traps and choke points he could use to his advantage. The path was dangerous, yes, but it could also serve as a line of defense. Ethan descended carefully, with Lyra following closely. He taught her to recognize potential threats, to stay silent when needed, and to trust in their surroundings. The little girl absorbed his words quickly, moving with the agility and awareness of someone much older than her years. Ethan was impressed by her courage, but he knew he could not rely on a child alone. He needed a plan, and he needed to act swiftly. As the raiders approached, Ethan positioned himself near the most vulnerable point of the cliff path. Using his knowledge of the terrain, he created simple barriers from rocks and logs, forcing the raiders to slow their advance. The first of them stumbled over a loose stone, giving Ethan a chance to call out from above. "Stop! Leave this place!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the cliffs. The raiders paused, surprised to see a human standing boldly against them. "You will not harm these people. Turn back now or face the consequences," the leader of the group snarled, stepping forward. "A human dares to challenge us. Foolish boy, you will regret this." Ethan stood firm, his heart pounding but his mind clear. He knew he could not take them all on directly, but he could use strategy. He signaled to Lyra to stay low and move to a safer position. Then he kicked a rock down the slope, which struck another loose stone, creating a small avalanche. The raiders stumbled, giving the villagers time to prepare. Amara appeared behind him, carrying a small set of tools and supplies. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes, "we must protect the village. Help me guide the others." Together, they worked quickly. Ethan directed villagers to strategic positions, using natural barriers and the uneven terrain to their advantage. He taught them how to use the glowing plants as signals and how to stay hidden until the raiders drew near. The villagers, initially skeptical of a human, began to trust his instructions, following his guidance with precision. Lyra ran to help where she could, warning those who were slow to react and keeping watch over the cliff edges. The raiders advanced cautiously, expecting an easy victory. They did not anticipate the clever use of terrain and human ingenuity. Rocks fell from above, vines were used to trip their steps, and the villagers emerged from hidden spots to create confusion and delay. Ethan moved with purpose, guiding every action, anticipating each move the raiders might make. He was no longer alone. He had a team, a family, and a community working with him. Amara joined him in the defense, using her knowledge of the land to create small traps and obstacles. Together, they formed a seamless team. Lyra's warnings from the high points allowed them to anticipate attacks before they happened. The raiders, frustrated and unprepared for such organized resistance, began to falter. Hours passed in tense confrontation, but Ethan's strategy worked. The raiders, unable to gain ground and facing unexpected resistance, began to retreat. Some tried to flee down the cliffs, only to stumble on loose rocks or fall into the river below. Those who remained eventually surrendered, recognizing that this small settlement was not an easy target. When the danger had passed, Ethan and Amara helped the villagers tend to minor injuries and secure the settlement. Lyra ran from one person to another, checking that everyone was safe, her small hands reaching out to comfort those who were frightened. Ethan watched her, proud of the courage and care she displayed, and he realized that she had taught him something profound about bravery and heart. As the sun began to set, the village returned to a quiet rhythm. Ethan sat with Amara and Lyra near the edge of the cliffs, the glowing river casting a soft light over them. Lyra leaned against him, her small voice whispering, You saved us all." Ethan smiled, feeling the exhaustion in his muscles but also the deep satisfaction of a day well spent. "We saved each other," he said gently. "Your courage helped everyone. I just guided us a little." Amara looked at him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "Ethan," she said softly, "you have shown more than bravery today. You have shown kindness, patience, and wisdom. Not many humans would act as you have." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. He had never thought of himself as a hero, but in this moment, he realized that courage was not about titles or recognition. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves, about standing firm when others faltered, and about trusting in the good of the heart, even when faced with danger. Lyra, sensing the bond between them, whispered again, "See, I told you you fit here. You can be our family." Ethan looked at the little girl, then at her mother, and he felt a quiet determination settle within him. He would protect them, care for them, and stay with them if they would have him. The dangers of the cliffs, the unpredictable storms, and the challenges of life on Vera 9 were not so frightening anymore. He had purpose, and purpose gave him strength. As night fell, the three of them sat together under the alien sky, the stars reflecting on the glowing river below. Ethan realized that life had changed in ways he could not have imagined. A little girl's words, innocent, simple, and filled with hope, had guided him to a new path. He no longer felt the weight of loneliness. He was part of something bigger, something meaningful, and he understood that humans could shine even in the farthest corners of the galaxy through courage, kindness, and heart. For the first time, he allowed himself to dream, not just of survival but of belonging, of family, and of the future they could build together. And as he gazed at the stars, he whispered softly to himself, "I will not fail them. I will protect them. I will be the family they deserve." The morning sun rose softly over the cliffs, casting a warm golden glow on the small home of Amara, Lyra, and Ethan. The events of the past days had left their mark on all of them. The village was peaceful once again, the raiders gone, and life seemed to resume its quiet rhythm. But Ethan knew that peace was fragile and vigilance was necessary. Still, for the first time in his life, he felt something deeper than survival. He felt hope, belonging, and purpose. Lyra was already awake, her bright eyes searching for Ethan. "Ethan," she called, running to him. "The morning is beautiful. The stars are gone, but the light is brighter." Ethan smiled, lifting her up into his arms. "It is beautiful," he agreed, "and we are safe. That's the most important thing." She hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "Thank you for everything. You stayed with us. You never left." Ethan's heart tightened. He had stayed not out of obligation, but because he had chosen to. Lyra had trusted him, relied on him, and in doing so, she had taught him that life was richer when shared. He had found a family where he had thought there was none. Amara joined them, carrying a small basket of fruits and supplies. She smiled at the sight of Ethan holding her daughter. "Good morning," she said softly. "You have both slept well." "Yes," Ethan replied, gently setting Lyra down. "And you?" Amara nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "Better now. We have been through much, but the heart is stronger when it is not alone." They shared a quiet breakfast together, the air filled with the soft hum of life in the village. Lyra chattered excitedly about her plans for the day, while Ethan listened, occasionally offering guidance and laughter. There was a comfort in this simplicity, a sense of normalcy that Ethan had never thought he would experience. He realized that these small moments, the shared meals, the quiet conversations, the laughter of a child, were what life was truly about. After breakfast, Ethan suggested a walk along the cliffs to inspect the paths and ensure the village remained safe from future dangers. Lyra eagerly agreed, skipping ahead with a spring in her step. Amara followed at a slower pace, her eyes scanning the terrain, her hands occasionally brushing the walls of the cliffs as if seeking strength from the stone itself. As they walked, Ethan noticed the little details of life on Vera 9. The way the plants glowed faintly in shaded areas, the movement of small creatures in the rocks, and the subtle changes in the wind that hinted at coming weather. He taught Lyra to notice these things, helping her understand the rhythms of the land. She absorbed his lessons with enthusiasm, her curiosity unending, her mind sharp and attentive. Midway through their walk, they reached a plateau overlooking the river that flowed through the valley. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the alien trees swayed gently in the wind. It was a moment of tranquility, a rare pause in a life that often demanded vigilance and survival. Lyra ran ahead to the edge, her eyes wide with wonder. "Ethan, look! The water, it glows. It's like the stars fell down into it." Ethan knelt beside her, pointing to the river below. "It is beautiful, isn't it? And it shows us that even in a world that can be harsh, there is beauty, there is hope." She turned to him, her small face serious. You bring hope too, Ethan. You make us strong." Ethan felt a warmth he could not describe. Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of truth. He had come to this place as a stranger, a human alone in a world of aliens, cliffs, and danger. But through his actions, his courage, and his care, he had become something more. He had become part of a family, a protector, and a source of hope for those who had none. Amara joined them, standing quietly and watching the river. "You have done more than guide her," she said softly. "You have guided me as well. Your courage, your patience, your heart is rare. Few humans would have acted as you have." Ethan shook his head. "I did not do it for praise, I did it because it was right. Because she and you deserved safety, kindness, protection. Amara's eyes softened and she placed a hand on his arm. That is why your heart is strong. That is why you are here. And if you wish to stay to be part of this life, you will be welcomed not as a guest but as family. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The little girl's words echoed in his mind. Are you alone? Then marry my mom, she's kindest. At first they had seemed whimsical, even impossible, but now he understood their meaning. They were not just childish wishes, they were a call to connection, to belonging, to a life shared with those who trusted and valued him. He looked at Lyra, who had been watching him closely, her eyes bright with hope. Lyra, he said gently, if it is your wish, I will stay. I will be here to protect you, to care for your mother, and to be part of your family. Lyra's face lit up with a joyful grin. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. Yes, yes, I knew you would say yes. You are ours. Amara approached slowly, her eyes shining with emotion. Ethan, if you choose this, then we will all be together, a family, strong, kind, and safe. You have shown us what it means to care. Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and awe. He had never imagined this life for himself, a life of connection, love, and purpose. But now, standing on the cliffs of Vera 9, with a little girl and her mother who had welcomed him into their world, he knew that he had found something more valuable than survival. He had found a reason to live, to protect, and to cherish every moment. The day passed in quiet happiness. They worked together to repair small damages from the recent storm and the raid, reinforcing walls, clearing paths, and organizing supplies. Lyra ran from task to task, helping where she could, and Ethan guided her with gentle instruction. Amara worked alongside them, her presence calm and reassuring. It was not just about survival anymore. It was about creating a life, a home, and a future together. As evening approached, Ethan suggested they light a small fire near the edge of the cliffs. The three of them sat around it, watching the stars reflect in the glowing river below. Lyra leaned against Ethan, her small hand gripping his arm, while Amara rested her head lightly on his shoulder. It was a quiet moment, but it spoke volumes: trust, love, and the warmth of family in a harsh and unpredictable world. Do you think the stars watch over us? Lyra asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked up at the sky, the countless stars shimmering in the alien night. Yes, he said gently. They watch over us, and sometimes we become stars ourselves, guiding others with our actions, our hearts, and our courage. Amara smiled, resting her head closer to him. Then you, Ethan, are our star. You have guided us, protected us, and shown us kindness when we needed it most. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come to Vera 9 as a human alone in the galaxy, with only his survival skills and determination. But through the bravery of a little girl, the trust of a mother, and his own choices, he had built something extraordinary. He had created a family where none existed, and in doing so, he had discovered the true meaning of courage, kindness, and heart. The night grew quiet, the alien world settling into calm. Ethan, Amara, and Lyra sat together, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. There would be challenges ahead, storms, wildlife, and the unpredictable dangers of the cliffs, but they faced them as one. Together, they had proven that humans, even in the farthest corners of the galaxy, could embody bravery, wisdom, and heart. And as Ethan looked at the stars, feeling the gentle weight of the little girl's hand in his, he whispered softly to himself, I am not alone anymore. I have a family, and I will protect them always. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly at home. The journey that began with a child's simple words had transformed him, given him purpose, and created a life filled with hope, love, and belonging. And in that quiet moment, he knew that no matter what the universe might throw at them, they would face it together, stronger, braver, and bound by the unbreakable ties of family. The stars above continued to shine, and below, the glowing river reflected their light. On Vera 9, amidst cliffs and alien skies, A human, an alien mother and her brave little daughter had found something rare and precious. A home, a family, and a future shaped by courage, kindness, and love. And so Ethan's story, once one of loneliness and survival, became a story of connection, bravery, and heart, proving that even in the vastness of space, humans could inspire, protect, and build lives that mattered beyond themselves. The little girl's words, spoken so simply and sincerely, had changed everything. "Are you alone? Then marry my mom, she's kindest." And indeed, through that innocent request, a new life had begun, full of hope, belonging, and unshakable courage.